Welcome to another episode of Sanford Says. This is Lisa Holder, Chief Communications and Cultural Affairs Administrator for the great city of Sanford. And today we have two incredible guests. Bennett Lloyd, who is the coordinator of the Museum of Seminole County History. Hi, Bennett.
Hello, how's it going?
First time on the podcast.
Yes.
And returning superstar guest, Brigitte Stephenson, who is the city of Sanford's curator of our Sanford Museum. Welcome, Brigitte.
Thank you so much for having me again. I feel like a veteran at this point.
You are. So we have a topic today that we're so excited about. It's called the Battle at Lake Monroe. These two historians are going to share with you some information about essentially a reenactment that's happening this weekend here in Sanford. Brigitte, why don't you take it away and tell us what's going on, and Bennett, feel free to chime in because this is something that is so exciting if you're a history buff, right? Or even if you're not.
Yeah, so first of all, I want to thank Bennett Lloyd and the Museum of Seminole County History because they've been running this event since you've started in 2016. Yeah, and we would help out with that event, but it's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. So this is the first year that we're very excited to have it fairly close to where the original location of the Battle of Camp Monroe is, so we can expand to there. Bennett, if you want to talk about like what happened on at the lake.
So essentially, during what we call the Second Seminole War, it was the Indian Removal Acts as applied to Florida. So the Indian Removal Acts were passed in 1830 by President Andrew Jackson, and his goal was to remove all of the Native Americans in places that he wanted white settlement over to the Oklahoma Territory. At that time, it was called the Arkansas Territory. And so in 1837, General Thomas Sidney Jessup, you may be familiar with that name, that's who Lake Jessup is named after, he came down with a whole group of soldiers, about 5,000 men in total, to try and force the Seminoles into negotiations. In order to do that, though, he had to first send a scouting party. And that consisted of about 300 U.S. soldiers, 50 Creek scouts, and then some Navy sailors. They arrived in late December of 1836, and into January and February of 1837, they were tasked with building a fort and guarding the 20,000 rations that General Jessup had ready for his men when he would come down in columns later. In order to try and inhibit this action, because of course the Seminoles, who are Florida's native group, they don't want to be removed, and they don't want the United States to form a beachhead on Lake Monroe where they can then attack the Seminoles. So they try and make a preemptive strike. They attack early, about 4 a.m. on February 7th of 1837. February 8th, excuse me. February 8th of 1837. And they attack the United States position. The U.S. soldiers are actually only in a log fence. The fort isn't finished yet. They had put up a lot of the picket walls, but the fort, which would later be called Fort Mellon, had not been completed. So the Seminoles actually occupy Fort Mellon and start raining down fire onto the United States position. They're behind a little 3-foot-high log fence. And so for about 4 hours, there is a battle raging on the shore between about 300 Seminoles under the command of King Philip and Wildcat and the U.S. soldiers under Captain Harney and Captain Mellon and Captain Vinton. So all of these, troops are embroiled in this battle, trying to oust the U.S. soldiers, and then the United States soldiers are actually trying to oust the Seminoles from their own fort, until the Navy sailors at around 9 a.m., they row out to the steamship that the soldiers had parked out there, called the Santee, and they leveled a 6-pound cannon at the fort. And so the United States starts trying to knock down its own fort that it had just spent a month building, and the Seminoles finally abandon the fort and flee the field. So it's a fascinating engagement. It was one of the first instances where you have combined arms actions between the Navy and the military under a single commander, Colonel Harney. And then you also have the first and only instance that I'm aware of where a Native American nation captures a United States fort, and then the United States has to besiege its own fort in order to get them out of it. So fascinating engagement, hugely important for Florida's history. And what we are doing this weekend is we are going to be holding a commemorative encampment. There's no battle reenactment yet. We hope in the future that if this goes well, then we will have the space and the resources to do one. But this is sort of a test of the new location. We're going to put up an encampment. We're going to have soldiers and Seminoles out there, and we're going to be hosting a school day. The school day is pretty much full. We have 500 people signed up to tour the camp that day. And then on Saturday, February 8th, that's going to be on the anniversary of the actual battle, we're going to be opening that up to the general public. So it's going to be free and open to the public. You can wander around the camps, and we will have demonstrators who are talking and demonstrating aspects of everyday life here in Frontier, Florida. Everything from, the Army surveys that were going on to what the Navy was doing, trying to build boats and barges and hold the river systems, and medicine from the 19th century, or the lack thereof, as the case may be. So we're going to be hosting all of this along with musket firing demonstrations and drills, and it should be a really exciting event.
Exactly, and so it is going to be in downtown, right in Fort Mellon Park, which is very exciting. So if you do hear gunfire that day, do not worry. We have permission. We also are going to have several living history historians and reenactors. They'll be camping the night. So if you see people camping in Fort Mellon Park, do not worry. We have permission. You do not need to call the police on us. We are very, very excited to kind of be here and really thank the city for allowing this event to really commemorate the history of this important battle that so many people don't know about. I mean, a lot of people don't even know about the Second Seminole Wars here in Florida and how important it was to the history. So the fact that both of our institutions, both county and city, can work together in this moment is fantastic to help preserve history.
Yeah, it certainly is. And you are sitting here wearing a what is that kind of a hat called?
Oh, so I wear a tricorn.
A tricorn.
Yes, mainly because I can get away with it. I work in a museum, so no one questions it, and also it helps identify me. So whenever someone's like, "Okay, you need to go see the coordinator of the museum," go find the guy with a tricorn.
Yeah,
he's outside working on the boat or on the draw knife or whatever.
Yeah, we have researchers. Sometimes I'm like, "Oh, this is a county thing." There's a man named Bennett Lloyd, and he wears a tricorn.
Yeah,
and it sounds like, is that a real quest? Are you giving me a fantasy quest? I'm like, no, it'll make sense once you go there.
And it is a hat. For those, I didn't know what a tricorn, and I'm sure there's some history about when does it come from?
Tricorn is the modern name for it. It has three corners, and so it's tricorned. But back in the day, it would have been called a tri-cocked hat. A cocked hat would have one side flipped up because it's a round brim. And so one side flipped up would be a cocked hat.
Okay.
And then you have a bi-cocked hat, which was popular during the Napoleonic era, where you have two sides up. And then the three-cornered hat, my hat, it has three corners, was very popular during the United States' British colonial period.
Right.
I can see so that. It's more often associated with piracy or the Revolutionary War, or any number of those things during the British colonial era.
Now, could you make that could you make any hat a tricorn hat back in those days?
As long as it has a round brim,
you could fold it.
And the reason you do that is kind of like your 18th century baseball cap. So you have the single front piece here and it's pretty wind resistant, so you can at sea the wind will blow over it and it won't blow it off as frequently as it will a typical round hat. But yeah, it's nice. I enjoy it, and it's also a way people can find me when.
If it's.
I will not be wearing it at the encampment though, because that would not be period for the 1830s.
Oh. Okay.
So I will be wearing the typical hat of a soldier during that period, which was nicknamed the hog killer or forage cap, and. Essentially, it was the Army's attempt to make a bucket you could wear on your head. And if you want to learn more about that, come see the encampment. It looks ridiculous.
And I'm also dressing up as well. I'm wearing a hand-sewn dress that I made that shows a working woman. I'm doing a laundress impression and talking about how these women used science for laundry and how successful that was during that time period, as well as what white women were doing at this time period. They got certain civil liberties, kind of sadly, to be a colonizing force in Florida because it was kind of the ideal. And I'll talk about why that is at that. So please come visit me. I would love to chit chat with you. I'll be wearing like 4 layers of petticoats.
So it's
and
cool out.
Stay. Actually, it's not bad because it's all cotton, and I talk about that as well. Why, believe it or not, our ancestors weren't stupid. Like the clothing they wear, it seems ridiculously hot and stuff, but because it's natural fibers, it breathes quite nicely. Most of our clothing is now polyester, which is a plastic, and so think about you being saran wrapped when you're in that, compared to something that kind of soaks up and dries fast like linen or cotton.
Right.
Now,
so where can
the U.S. Army, on the other hand, was kind of stupid. They sent us down here in wool. So I will be wearing wool. And
yeah, I will be cooler than you.
Yes.
Okay. Well, and so can people dress up like when they attend, or what do you? I mean, do you just? I mean, if they want to, right?
I mean, if they want to,
they don't have to.
And we will probably.
Don't try and impersonate anyone.
Yeah, no, don't do that.
Yeah. Okay, and so the both of you, the Museum of Seminole County, you are open for regularly? What is your?
So we are open from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Tuesday through Saturday. We are part of the Seminole County Library System underneath Parks and Recreation, and so we are located at 300 Esslinger Way in Sanford, down by the Civil Courthouse.
Okay. And you could find information on the county website, right?
Yes, SeminoleCountyFL.gov/museum. We also have a very active Facebook page, so definitely check us out there.
And that's where this event is posted, right?
Yes.
And on the city's page and the museum page. Okay,
Right.
And Brigitte, what about our museum?
Yeah, our museum is open Tuesdays through Saturdays, 9 to 5. We're right in Fort Mellon Park. And we are free to the public, which is pretty exciting as well.
Okay, and so when you mention Seminole and all of these names, Jessup, it's hard to. These are places, geographical places that are named after real incidents and real people. So we're Seminole County.
Yes.
And so it didn't just get named out of the air. There's a reason for that, right? Right.
Seminole County was created in 1913, and back then there was a confusion in the etymology of Seminole, and they believed that it meant runaway. It doesn't quite translate to runaway if you talk to modern Muskogee speakers, but the intention of the people who founded the county was that we were sort of running away from Orange County, and they wanted to capture that spirit of native resistance, because 100 years after this battle took place, there was a romanticization of the Seminoles and their struggle. The United States, I wouldn't say they felt bad about what they did, but they felt that it was kind of a Pyrrhic victory, and that there was a lot that was lost about native cultures, and they wanted to capture that spirit of resistance.
Right. So I think so people want to learn more about history. I think, explain to us real quickly what your take is and why history is so important. Both of you, Brigitte, what do you say about that?
History is kind of the tapestry of how we have our current day. And if you can't look back and see how basically all these different events and stuff weave together today, it's hugely important to see where we are, and it comes from that past. And it also is a story of humanity. There's something reassuring looking back and seeing people are people at the end of the day. And that human connection is kind of, universal.
Right, and it's been around for ages, right?
To sort of piggyback off of that, there's that famous saying, those who don't learn their history are doomed to repeat it. Right. So not only can we look back and see, hey, this is why we are where we are, but we can also see, hey, this is what's been tried before, and this is how it went. In the modern day, we can look at something that happened 200 plus years ago and say, well, that didn't go well, and we kind of regret that now. So we can then look at the actions that humanity took at the time, which led us to that point, and try and avoid those in the future. We can sort of see the warning signs, as it were.
Yeah. I think it's so exciting and enriching that to our community that we have 2 museums and 2 people that are so well-versed in history of our city and our county and our region. It's just such an added amenity please, for those listening, visit our museums and come down to the event this weekend. And one thing particularly, this is the first year we're down here, because for those that may be listening outside of Sanford or even Florida, Seminole County, we are directly on Lake Monroe. That is why if you stand and look outside City Hall's windows, you're going to see St. John's River. You're going to see Lake Monroe. So that's the connection, and that's why we're bringing it down here for the first time. You should maybe have a vessel out there.
So,
fingers crossed, right?
If it doesn't sink, then we will be out there. We have a punt barge, which would have been the type that the Navy used to unload their steamers. The reason why they came down to Lake Monroe was this is the furthest south that the steamships could get on the St. Johns River. So they had commissioned a steamer, the Santee, but of course that steamer can't go all the way to shore. It's too shallow. So we're going to have some of the barges that would have been the type they used to unload all of these rations that the soldiers were guarding at the time. And so that's also why, the city of Sanford was established. That's why Fort Mellon became a huge supply depot. It's because this is the farthest south that the supply ships could get.
And you mentioned Fort Mellon. The name Fort Mellon came because the one casualty on the United States Army side was a man named Captain Charles Mellon. He died at the very beginning of the battle, and that is why when they decided to remake the fort, finish what they started, they named it Fort Mellon after his memory. We'll have people sometimes ask, is it named because there were melons grown here? No. It's named after a real person.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Two L's, not one.
Yes.
Right. Do we have any kind of, depiction of what the fort could have looked like at the museum or anywhere?
So yes, at the Museum of Seminole County History, we have a 3D rendering that you can see of what the fort would have looked like with all the warehouses, the officers' quarters, everything.
Really
there
cool.
are some sketches that were done by soldiers during the period as the fort evolved, because the fort didn't start out complete. It grew over time. So we have the Williams sketch, Vinton's sketch of the forts, and we also have two maps. One was made by I forget his first name, but his last name was Peyton. And then the Lieutenant Peyton and then Lieutenant William Davidson each drew a map of this area of the St. Johns in subsequent surveys in 1837. Both of those maps will be on display at the event. And you can see the fort as it was drawn back in 1837. So you can see an overhead view of what the layout was.
Super cool. Yeah, for those of you who have kids that play at Fort Mellon Park, it's not just called Fort Mellon because there was cantaloupe out there. There's a major historic significance to the name of our city and our county and all of that goes along here.
And it's worth noting that where the Sanford Museum is and where the Fort Mellon Park is. So we're going to be at 520 East 1st Street in Sanford. And where that is would have been on the leftmost flank of that battle. The Captain John Rogers Vinton mentions that the Seminoles, we would have been on where the Seminole left wing was. The Seminoles kept 250 yards or more backward because that was the range of their rifles, and that outranged the muskets of the U.S. soldiers. So we would be on the leftmost site of that battle.
Okay, and what time does it start?
So it goes from 9 a.m. until 4 p.m.
Okay.
And so, yeah.
On Saturday,
yes,
right?
on Saturday. From 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. We will be open to the public. You can wander around, talk with the living historians, and learn about this fascinating period in history, and very impactful one.
Wonderful.
And it's free.
Yes, free and open to the public.
It's free.
Free, F-R-E. Now, are there going to be vendors and food auctions there?
Yes.
There will be some food trucks.
Yeah. Food trucks.
Just to the north on Semolina Boulevard, we will be setting up some food trucks if you get peckish.
Right.
Other than that, there is also downtown, which you can visit, which is within walking distance. So definitely check out our downtown.
And you definitely recommend families, right? Bring your children, right?
Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
And okay, well, any last words to say here, Brigitte?
First of all, just thank you so much for allowing us to do this and talk about this event. And we hope to make it bigger and bigger each year.
Yeah, this is great. Bennett?
Again, I would echo my thanks and look forward to seeing you all February 8th.
All right, in Sanford, Florida. Thank you. This is Lisa Holder, Chief Communications and Cultural Affairs Administrator. You can find this podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts and on the city website at sanfordfl.gov. Thanks for listening. Until next time, have a great day. Bye now.